Next up, we have Simon Mitchell. He's the Managing Director of Southern Gold. Very interesting. They're looking for gold in Southern Korea. Hey, good to see you, Simon. Over to you. Southern Korea, South Korea, let's try. Over to you, Simon, to tell the Southern Gold story. ASX code, ladies and gentlemen, is SAU.
Thanks, Kerry. And yes, definitely South Korea. And look, that's what we're all about. We're very much focused on that as a country play. That's essentially what we are. We're a country play, unusual jurisdiction. You can see there, I flag it as a new frontier for epithermal gold-silver discoveries. So we really feel like we're doing something a bit different. I want to, in this very quick presentation, go to the fact, why are we in the right neighbourhood? Have we got the right people? What's Korea like as a place to operate as a jurisdiction? And what are we doing as a company, with our funding and so forth? We're well funded. And as part of that, I'm going to do a slightly deeper dive on one of our projects, just to give people a bit of a feel for the sort of situation that we're facing in Korea and how we're building our position with time. So that's it in a nutshell. We're all about finding high-grade precious metal deposits in South Korea. Let's go to the neighbourhood first of all. You can see here, I highlight the fact that we've got world-class deposits in our region, in our near neighbourhood, if you will. So perhaps well known is the Jiangdong Peninsula in China. Big orogenic systems have been found there. In fact, some have been found quite recently. Super big systems and by any definition, world-class. Very different in southern Japan, where most famously the Hishikari deposit was found by Mitsubishi Corp. Sumitomo Corporation, and that's been mined since the mid-80s or so. Very, very probably the longest running highest grade gold mine in the world.
Oh, wow.
Epithermal in nature. Yeah, so this is true world-class type territory. And the essence of what we're after, we're basically chasing epithermals in southwestern Korea. So you've got a few photos there just to prompt that. They do indeed occur there. Doug Kerwin, who's on our board, proved that back in the 1990s. And some discoveries were made with the Ivanhoe group. And this is to illustrate that in perhaps a little bit more detail. You can see the photographs there, bottom left. That was from the Ivanhoe days. They got a small mine going there called Unsan. Several discoveries were made. You can see those on the map. Unsan, Moisan, Gasado, bottom left there of the map where it's in blue. These are epithermal systems. In contrast to what was done historically in Korea, which was the mining more of orogenic systems. Not exclusively so, but the orogenic systems definitely dominated. And these are largely the projects you can see there highlighted in purple. Some of the purple ones are not orogenic, but most of them are. And that's because they were big white bucky quartz veins sticking out of the ground. The old timers could find them relatively easily and start mining them by following their nose, so to speak. They sit in the Precambrian rocks, the older generation of geology, if you will. We're targeting the edges of Cretaceous basins for these epithermal rocks. To try and find the kind of sweet spot, if you will, of an epithermal discovery. So that's what we're all about. And hopefully we've got the right crew on board. I mentioned before Ivanhoe and the fact that they were active there in the 90s, made some discoveries. A lot of those guys are with us today. So we've got some of that team involved in our technical group, which feed into, technically advise our Korean guys on the ground in Korea. So we think we've got first-class people, including, Doug Kerwin, for example, who's obviously on our board, has a long association with Korea, big Korea believer in its potential, but others too, like Craig Panther, who had headed up Ivanhoe's China office and spent a lot of time in Korea himself. So we think we've got the right people on the ground, people who've got discovery records, and, able to guide the young Korean team. You can see standing around the table, they're sitting around the table. Going to people a little bit more, just with our board, Michael McNeely, bottom or middle right, he joined our board last year when Metal Tiger made its investment. They're a major shareholder of us. Right. So Michael brings a different set of skill set to the board, perhaps a more ECM sort of role. I want to talk too about BJ Kim on the bottom right there. So BJ is an ex-Samsung CNT executive and runs our Korean show, is obviously the main guiding light for our Korean team and has been fantastic in that role since he's come on board. So made a huge difference to our team dynamics and our ability to execute our programs in Korea. So been a fantastic addition in the last 18 months, 2 years with him on board. Going to Korea, speaking of having BJ on board and transforming our team, in a bigger picture sense, Korea has been an amazing story. I think the thing for people to have in their minds when they're thinking about this jurisdiction is that it's basically a fully industrialized, fully developed first world nation, not unlike Japan, and has been an amazing economic success story, which is that graph on the top there, where they've gone from a negligible GDP per person to a rich country's GDP per person of about 32,000 US. The Koreans themselves refer to that as the miracle on the Han River, which is the river that runs through Seoul. And that's really, even the Koreans see that it's been quite an amazing transformation. And hats off to them. We're now dealing with, the brands that everyone's familiar with, the Samsungs, the LGs, the Hyundais of the world. Very good corporate tax rate, no royalties, very supportive government regime for us to do our work, unbelievable infrastructure. So it's a brilliant place to operate in and work. You can see there from the fourth bullet point that mining is a tiny part of their economy, which probably explains the lack of royalties and the fact that they're more interested in us working in the regional areas with economic activity than they are in taxing us. And so that's a refreshing circumstance or environment to operate in, I have to say, Kerry. And so, it's something to keep in the back of the mind for the average investor, is that really the mining industry is a tiny part of the country. And we're, as Australians, coming in as sort of technical experts and trying to reinvigorate an exploration culture, which has been lacking or missing for several decades. Okay, so in terms of that active exploration, where does it sort of sit? And I guess there are sort of two sort of broad categories of project with us. Certainly in the presentations, the red ones are the ones that have been granted by the Korean government and 100% owned sort of projects that Southern Gold has. There's a few green ones you'll see there, Gunma, Dayam and Jungwal. These are new projects we developed up in the last 12 months or so. And so they're going through the application process. They should be granted, I hope, over the next sort of 6 months or so. And so there's a bit of a kind of a systematic process that you have to go through for that to occur. But we're seeing some amazing results from some of that grassroots sort of type exploration. You can see from that third bullet point or the third paragraph there, our project generation work is really the engine room of the company. And there's about 100 targets that we have worked up in country. You won't see those 100 targets on a map. That's largely because that's very valuable IP for us. We've been working on it for several years. But I guess the thing for investors to bear in mind is that the sort of projects that sit in the corporate presentation are like the tip of the iceberg, which is visible. But there's this bigger thing going on, which is really a country play, a lot of technical work going on broadly across the country, which is why we're very excited by this whole opportunity. The sort of quality of the projects that we're seeing and how they're unfolding is just first class, internationally speaking. So a lot going on, but I'm just going to today, in the interest of time, delve a little bit deeper into just one of these projects that you see on the map there. It's called Dokon. You can see there just to the southwest of Gunma, about sort of central South Korea. Yep. And this is what it looks like. So this photograph is taken looking west towards an area where there was some historical mining. So where what was called the main mine and the Shin Hill adit. And you can see the little adit there going into the side of the mountain or the side of the hill. Typically in Korea, you sort of need a word which is sort of something that's more than a hill but less than a mountain. We don't have one in English. But this is a very kind of typical situation in Korea. Just behind that hill in the background there's a major drop-off into a valley. So this is actually an elevated valley, has its own little sort of microclimate, very steep hills, as you can see there on the right, and then valley fill in between the hills. So and that's where they're growing their crops or running their animal farms. So this is a very typical scene in Korea. And this is the same area, different time, photographed looking back the other way, looking towards the east, where you've got the bonanza and thorn zone just to the margin of that hill there. Again, you can see the steep hills in the background, and obviously the agricultural sort of activity in the valley fill in between. So that's a very typical scenario for us in Korea. Then sitting or standing on the bonanza zone, looking sort of to the north, you can see that the trend heads off towards those hills there, with the nestle and thistle zone sort of just beyond that margin of that next hill. And you can also see how it can be grown with a lot of vegetation on these hills. So again, it goes to one of the reasons why we do a lot of our field work during the winter season or just post-winter, when the snow is melted and this sort of foliage has died away and we can see the rocks more easily. So, people ask me, so why did you get involved? Why do you look in Dokon in the first place? And historically, it was a big silver mining area. And you can see there from this historic map, these small-scale underground mines, and the fact that we've got very large grades. If I move my mouse here, you can see there, 9,000 grams per tonne silver there. But even the so-called lower grade was still 600 grams per tonne silver. So this is, definitely all grade silver grades, very, very high grade. We thought that was quite interesting. So we went and had a closer look at the area. And sure enough, off to the east, we've found this area, which we call the Golden Surprise Trend. We've done a series of different work there. Most recently, we announced the results of the soil survey, which you see on the right-hand side. That was put out in a release a few days ago. Very good soil, gold and arsenic trends. And where we've got the intersection of major structures, we get the silver kick, and that's the top right there. And so we're developing up the next lot of drill targets by following the mineralisation trend and just building the picture in 3 dimensions, as well as north-south laterally. We're doing some petrological studies and other works just to kind of really build the picture before we do our next round of drilling, which hopefully is not too far away in this project. So stepping back from Dokon, looking at this golden surprise trend, you can see here, Kerry, the sort of results we're getting, either hundreds of grams per tonne silver or even up to thousands of grams per tonne silver. Larger, we're going to go back and do some more soil sampling as we follow the trend to the north and see whether or not we actually are on the main game. We think that, nettle zone is looking like a very good target based on the information we have today. And so, that's likely to see a couple of drill holes. But this is exciting grassroots exploration, uncovering new systems, never been tested before. So we follow that to the north, and who knows what we'll discover. We're going to find the right geological trap, and then I think we're away in terms of finding something economic. Going to things corporately, though, how are we actually doing all this? Well, we're fully funded. We've got, $9 million Aussie in the bank. We've got a drill for equity deal with a Sino, which adds to that. So we've got effectively more than 10 million Aussie in terms of corporate cash resources. And we're in the process of selling our assets to Bluebird in London. There's a price tag for that determined by an independent expert of just under 10 million US. That's being advanced at the moment, and hopefully we'll be able to announce something on that shortly. Resolution expected, in this quarter, I would hope. Obviously a work in progress, and we just keep chipping away at that. And you can see there we've suffered a little bit on our share price in the last month or two. And, the managing director, myself and the chairman have been buying a bit of stock as it dipped below 10 cents. We think this is pretty compelling buying at this sort of price. Given the fact
sorry, Simon, to interrupt you. You and the chairman have been buying on market, have you?
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, mainly because you can see there that, when we're trading sub 10 cents a share, it implies basically a negative enterprise value when you take into account the value of the sale of the joint venture to Bluebird. So, In other words, the market's not attributing a great deal of value either to our exploration or to the joint venture sale process. So, as these things become resolved, I'm sure the market will sort that out in due course. But we think we're pretty compelling buying at the moment.
Do you? Sorry to interrupt you again, but just on that, do you think that the market doesn't understand Korea or South Korea, or wondering whether or not it's a jurisdiction? But some of those soil samples that you've been taking are pretty high grade silver from what I was looking at. Do you think that the market is just saying, well, we're not quite sure about Korea? What do you put it down to?
Look, I think so. I think it's often the way when you're in the frontier. You're by definition, you're the first. And let's face it, lots of people need to see good results in drill core before they're really convinced that you're onto something that's got legs. So I think we're in that circumstance where we've got good people on the ground. We're funded. We're going to be testing a bunch of things. Great time for investors that are looking for things which are not overvalued, which, let's face it, it's hard to find in the gold space. And you're trying to back the right horse, good people, well-funded, and testing some really exciting systems. I'm not suggesting we're going to find 5 gold mines in the next 6 months, but we're certainly in the right area and we're drilling the right things. And it's just a matter of time before we start hitting good grades. And then I think the penny will drop at that point and it'll be like, oh, it's game on. and then we go from being frontier to being, a jurisdiction which has got sort of demonstrable mines being evolving. So, we're not quite there yet. So we keep chipping away.
Yeah, well, mining is not a short-term thing either, Simon. If I could just ask you another question, which is, you've done lots of soil sampling. What are we looking at in terms of the drilling? Because you've got there the ADS drill for equity deal, which is great. Who are ADS? Have you got some drill rigs up on any of the sites? Where are you with that?
Yeah, so Asylum Drilling Services is an Australian drilling company that operate in China and are looking to expand into Korea because they kind of get that part of the world and how to operate. There is a very good drill contractor in Korea that they've got a relationship with that we use. So basically, Asino are acting as advisors to that company and will no doubt use that as the kernel in which they'll start to bring their own gear and people in over time. So a bunch of drill rigs in China that they're going to probably get across to Korea in due course. In fact, I know they're working on that as we speak. I've got good Australian geologists who now know how to diplomatically work with the Korean crews to get the right outcome. And let's face it, mineral exploration drilling is a bit more onerous than, say, geotechnical drilling or drilling for water, which is what typically a lot of Korean drilling companies do. So mineral exploration not being a really big part of the system there. So again, frontier work, we've done a lot of work on that in the last couple of years. Taken us a little while to find the right contractor, get ADS involved. But, having said that, I don't lie awake at night worrying about the drilling anymore like I used to.
Right.
There was a time where we got, less than 10 metres a day and 85% recovery, and it used to be a bit of a nightmare. But now we're getting good productivity, and more importantly, our core recoveries are right up there, 97, 98% plus. So that's probably the most important thing with our business. So, yeah, we're in much better shape in that front.
Okay, we've got 1 minute left, Simon. Just have you got? Did you have another slide? Or yes,
this just to wrap up because you were asking about drilling.
Yeah,
and so this is just going to our pipeline. We're obviously doing some field work at the moment where we've got the crews on the ground. We're doing some more soils because it's working very well. A little bit like RAB drilling in Australia, but we're soil sampling in Korea. And we hope to be diamond drilling at Dokon shortly, subject to securing our access there, which is in process. And ultimately, we've got first pass scout drilling that's sort of due in the pipeline going forward. Places like Gunma, Dayan Valley, Jungwa. We haven't talked about those today because you need almost like an hour presentation to kind of go to those projects. But needless to say, we've got stuff in the background that we hope to get the rig to during the course of this year and early next year. And plenty of work to do on the ground, Kerry. So we're very active, and there's a bit to unfold in the pipeline over the course of the next 12 to 18 months.
And I tell you what, Simon, thank you very much for staying on time. And you know what? It's the perseverance and building the story that's where you're at the moment. And I would say to investors that are out there, it's all about patience in the mining game. Simon Mitchell, Southern Gold, thanks for joining us at the Virtual Gold Conference.
Thanks, Kerry. Very good. Thank you.
ABC Bullion, the Australian bullion company. Trading since 1972, ABC Bullion is Australia's largest independent bullion dealer and precious metals depository. Fully insured and verified by independent audit. ABC Bullion offers a range of proprietary investment products and storage solutions and Australia's first gold and silver accumulation plan. ABC Bullion.